Hello all, welcome back to software testing course. So in the last class we had stopped or studied till testing process management activities. So let's get started today with the planning, budgeting and scheduling the testing phase. So the diagram whatever you are seeing here, it is for the test planning process, right? So the first thing here is whenever you get the SRS document, you have to start analyzing it. You have to identify the functional, non-functional requirements which can be tested. So say suppose what are the assumptions, limitations, these all things have to be kept in mind while doing the analysis. That means you should have a thorough understanding of the requirement document or basically the requirements which you are gonna test. Next is your test design. Here what you can do is like you can identify the objectives of the testing, then you can have the criteria for completion of the testing that can be done here. In the third stage, here you can do the estimation of the time, effort and the budget. That means how much budget you need for the testing process, how much time you need, how many people you need for the testing process. The fourth stage here is the risk analysis. It may be process risk or the product risk, so you have to analyze it. So if say for example, if suppose the person who is working in your testing team, if he leaves in between the project, what will happen? This is one kind of a risk, right? So how do you accommodate this risk? That has to be done here. And the last one is you have to prepare the test plan document. So in the test plan document we will have certain things, right? Like what are the things to be tested, assumptions, what type of testing we will carry out. So these things have to be captured in the test plan document. Okay. So again in the test planning we have certain things or we need to identify certain things. So here are those. So the first one is what are the testing objectives and the scope of testing. Till how much you have to do the testing, right? Then how to align overall process to the project, like your organization it might have a testing process. How do you take that process and you can apply it to your project testing team? Then what are the criteria for completion of the testing? Based on what criteria you say that the testing has been completed, like either the whatever effort or the budget which has been allocated, whether it has exhausted. So these are some of the examples, right? Then what type of the testing has to be carried out? Are you going to use some tools? Are you doing automation here? Then what are the work products that would be generated in the testing phase, like your test cases, then the defect report. Again, in the planning, we can have your money and time. That is, how much money is required for the testing process, or how much time is required for the testing process. How many people or the testing professional we require. What is the team structure? So basically, whatever we have seen in the last diagram, that has to be captured in your planning process. Fine. Next, we have to identify, like in the testing objective, what all things will come into your picture. So in the testing objective, so the test manager he has to clearly identify the objectives. So the objectives such as to find the defects and report it to the development team. Then you to fix the defects as well as to suggest how to improve the software. So like if you have GUI, how what are the improvements that can be done to your GUI, that can be one objective. Or to check whether the software meets your functional and the interface requirements in case if you have the COTS software. And if suppose acceptance testing is done by the customer, so you have to check whether the task which will be assigned to the testing team. So the next objective could be like if you are doing the white box testing, if you have the access to the code, you can check for the code completeness, whether it has been written according to the coding standards or the guidelines, whether it has proper comments or not. Then the next factor in the testing objective could be if you are doing non-functional testing. So what type of non-functional testing has to be done? So these attributes you have to take from your clients. So this can be another objective. And again, if you are buying a COTS software, then you have to check. You have to identify whether the COTS software, that means you have taken the software from any other organization, you have bought it. So if that particular software is in par or it has the requirement same as your project requirement or not, these things have to be done. So these are the few examples for your testing objective. So the next we will study here is the criteria for completion of testing. Again here, as we all know, the software testing is never complete, but at some point we have to say that yeah, testing is enough. So based on what thing we can say the testing has been done. right? So this decision has to be based on some criteria which need to be identified during the planning stage itself, like whenever you run out of time or run out of the budget, or the graph for the defects, whether it is decreasing. So these are the things can be taken into consideration, and it can be decided as a criteria for completion. And again, this has to be done in the planning stage itself. So these all things will come into your planning process. Okay, so next we will study about budgeting. So identification of the testing objectives and the criteria for completion. So these are the two main factors that has to be worked out properly or in detail, so that you can have a realistic estimation of the effort and the budget and the time that can be used for your testing phase. So based on the testing objectives and the criteria of completion or criteria for completing your testing, you will be able to approximately estimate the effort or the cost which has been needed for your testing phase in the person months, like for how many persons or how many testers you need and how many months you need to complete the testing process. That can be judged based on the identification of the test objective and then your criteria for completion. So again, you have to here consider the risk associated as well. Like, say, suppose we have taken an example, right? If you see a risk of people living in between, like the testers leaving the team or the organization in between, so you have to consider those risks as well as, and then you have to have the budgeting properly. So the effort estimate, it needs to be adjusted keeping in view the risk associated with your project. So there are generally two approaches that are followed for your effort estimation. One is experience based and the second one is matrix based. So what will happen in organization is like, so the effort estimation that is based on the past experience, the experts, they might be worked on the similar projects and they might have earlier estimated the effort. That is purely based on their gut feeling. Like, since they are the experts, they estimate turn to be reasonably true or the accurate, right? But if you use a more scientific approach to use the matrix, so what you can do is like, if your organization, it suppose it has kept the records of the project that it has executed earlier, and then say suppose it has kept the matrix such as what are the number of defects that has been found out. So having this historical records, you can find out how much effort is needed for your testing process. Say for example again, say in your earlier project, say suppose there were 1 lakh lines of codes and the testing could be completed in the 4 months by 5 testers. Then so each tester would complete testing of say suppose 5000 lines of code per month. And then say suppose at present you have a project wherein it is the functionality and all, it is say suppose it is similar, but the total lines of code is 2 lakh. Then what can be done? So you can reasonably estimate that 40% months of effort is required, right? So we have to remember two projects must be of the same type here whenever you are doing this comparison. Okay, so basically whenever this experience based effort estimation comes into picture, it is purely based on the gut feeling of the experts. Okay, say suppose their experience, based on their experience you can have it. If you are following matrix based effort estimation approach, that means you have to have the matrix or the historical records, right? So again, the project here must be of same type, it should be of similar thing. Okay, and the next one is schedule. So the schedule for the testing phase, it is generally dependent on the overall time frame of the project. Like generally 30-40% of the total time is required for the testing phase. But only problem here is like this 30-40% of the total time which is required for your testing phase will never be allocated. So the testers, they have to work with the tight schedules. Okay, that means time stringent will be there within the specified time. You have to have or you have to complete the testing process. Okay, so now we will see the test plan. How does it look? So, as you all know, before taking up the testing, this test plan has to be completed, and it is preferable if the test plan is prepared during your overall project planning itself, and it is then it can be revised just before your testing process starts. So, your test plan, it should contain the project name. You can see here, then estimated start date and the end date. Then once this is done, you have to have when actually the testing has started and it has been completed. then it has to have the budget, then the persons, the manpower what is required for your testing process. Then it should have the link to your work product such as your SRS document, design documents. Then it should have the details about the test setup, like what hardware or the software environment that has to be set up, so that the testing can be carried out. So these all things are captured here. Again, the types of testing, either it is alpha testing, beta testing, whatever the type of testing is there, it should be done here. If you have any checklist, it has to be mentioned. Then the tools, if you are using any, those have to be mentioned. Again, the defect, it is very important, you know and you should have a format for the defect as well, like the defect report, what are the things it should contain. So that can be um, that has to be present in the test plan document. So this is the basic test plan format, right? So again, this differs from company to company. That means few points whatever you can see in this slide, which would be there in the test plan, that cannot be that might not be in the test plan of the other organization. Okay, so this is the format of your test plan. So next we will talk about alignment of the process to the project. So in the organization, if it has ISO 9001 or CMMI certification, so the organization wide process has to be defined. So these are the generic process definitions that are applicable for all the projects. So this is organization wide process. Okay, so based on this process, the processes that are specifically required for the project on hand need to be worked out. So your alignment of the process to the project, it involves fine tuning of the testing process for your project based on the overall testing process definition. So this means basically, as an organization, they will be following some international models like CMMI or ISO 9001. So that would be for your entire organization. So if you want to apply that particular model to your project, then how you are going to apply it? So that has to be that is nothing but your alignment of the process to your project. Again, the alignment cannot be done just like that. You should have, or you should keep in mind some factors here. So the first one is like whether the software is COTS software or the custom built, like whether it has been the software has been bought from outside, whether you have developed it. Then whether the software is developed in-house or it has been subcontracted. Then what is the software development life cycle you have chosen. Then which procedural language you have done, like C, or have you used any object oriented languages. Then the application of the domain, whether it is a telecom software, embedded software, ERP, what are the things. If it is there, then how can you apply that particular international model to your project if suppose it is of embedded software. Then whether the development or the testing models such as extreme programming and buddy testing have been used or not. So these are the few things you have to keep in mind while aligning the process, that is the international standard, with your project. Okay, that's it for today. We'll conclude our session. Thank you.